Internet that's everything you imagine, and then some. Quantum Fiber, your world unleashed. Sign up today and get internet with a price for life. Keep your internet service monthly rate for as long as you keep your plan. Internet service monthly rate subject to continued plan availability.
Picking up! Oscar!
How much are buyers willing to pay for your house? My friends with the Pomerleau team make it free and really easy to find out. Just type in your address on PomerleauTeam.com and find out in seconds what your home would sell for. If you do decide to sell, Matt's the only agent I trust. Go to PomerleauTeam.com.
Whoa, take a heed, little brother. Winter is coming.
Wade, you've gone medieval.
Aye, thou must ready thy castle for the coldest of winters.
Now's the time for a pronto tune-up. We'll inspect, clean, and recalibrate your furnace back to factory-fresh settings.
Forget not thy guarantees.
No breakdowns this winter, or we'll refund your money and fix it for free.
Comfort!
Get your winter furnace tune-up
For only $139
at prontoheat.com.
Milo has developed the technology to make moving easy, so stress less with moves by using Milo. Visit getmilo.com for no-risk free online booking and a guaranteed rate in a minute. It's getmilo.com. Get, MYLO.com.
Save up to $400 off per beautiful door or patio door at buildersandremodelers.com.
From the Your Boat Club Weather Center.
This report is sponsored by Papa Murphy's.
Fan forecast.
59 overnight, maybe some rain tomorrow with a high of 74.
Papa Murphy's $7.99 everyday value lineup is a big deal for a small price. We're talking a large pizza with new shredded pepperoni, crumbled sausage, or classic cheese for $7.99 each, which means you can afford big-time deliciousness at Papa Murphy's.
Now back to the 651 Carpets Plus, home of the Next Day Install Studios on The Fan.
Johnny Athletic.
Johnny Athletic. Johnny Athletic. And he's on the Dan Barreiro right now.
Can't be in studio because he's preparing for his big road trip. Los Angeles, California. He'll be there.
I think he packs his own clothes, unlike Anthony Edwards. I think.
Johnny will be at the Fabulous Forum tomorrow night as the Wolves take on the Lakers, opening night, National Basketball Association. Then he's following the club to Sacramento, California as well. He joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Somebody wanted me to ask you right off the top whether Rosen or Nicholson will have better seats, Lakers Wolves. I don't think Nicholson goes anymore, does he?
No, I think if he does, it's very few and far between.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's in the shape to be doing that, but Kilby will definitely have great seats. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, that's automatic. Yeah.
Meeting up with him. So, he'll be front and center and soaking it all up.
Perfect. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, let's start with the Wolves. Then I want to go Lynx, and then we'll maybe finish with some Vikings to wrap things up today. The club opens tomorrow night. You had a nice final look, kind of a primer, at the Wolves roster. I want to boil it down, what you wrote, to this simple question. Give me the interesting/intriguing players on this roster that you think realistically might not play all that much, at least early in this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the number one name that comes to mind right away is Rob Dillingham.
Yeah.
They draft him number 8 overall. Tim Connolly says on draft night that we picked him to play and he's going to have a big role and we have to get him ready for the playoffs and all those things. But then that was obviously before they make the cat trade and before Dante DiVincenzo comes in and shows that he's actually looks like a pretty decent initiator of the offense. And not just a catch and shoot guy or a shoot off the move type of a player. And when you listen to Coach Finch after the finale against Denver, the preseason finale, he was pretty tepid in his review of where Rob Dillingham is at. And very much just kind of,
that's what I love. This is one of the good things about Finchy. There are a lot of coaches who might feel the same thing about a highly touted draftee, but I give him credit. I mean, I don't think he's being cruel, but I think he's just observing. Nope. And he's not afraid to say it, which means he's got to be telling the player that too, which is what players, especially young players, need to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that, it's asking a lot of a 19-year-old to come in and play on a contender. And that's exactly what the Timberwolves are. They are a contender in the Western Conference. And so it was always going to be an uphill battle. But I think one of the things that fans and some media and people get excited about is you watch him play, and he is electric. He's absolutely a dynamic offensive player that can do things that jump off the screen when you're watching him. But what they need from him is to be a mature, smart player who really has a handle on his role and can get others involved. And there were some really good things they did. He had a 5-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio in the preseason. That's really good. But it's clear that Chris Finch believes that he has a long way to go just in terms of feel for the game, all that. None of that is illegal. That should be expected. But I think for a lot of us who thought, wow, you trade into the draft again to get the number 8 pick, you need a bucket getter. Is this, are they just going to kind of throw him into the deep end? I don't think they are, Dan. And I think it's going to be few minutes early on and maybe even none at all on opening night, just depending on how the game goes.
All right. So do you buy the notion early that the coach is committed to playing 10, and who are the 10 if you do?
Yeah, I mean, I do think so, Dan. He has kind of said, and he's acknowledged that it's difficult to play 10, but I think with the depth that they have seen so far in the preseason and the talent that they have, I do think he wants to sparse out the minutes a little bit more, which means that maybe Mike Conley plays a few fewer minutes. Maybe Rudy Gobert doesn't play quite as much as they try and preserve those legs a little bit. But yeah, the 10 are the starting 5. And then you have Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dante DiVincenzo. I think Joe Ingles is going to play early. And then that 10th spot, Dan, I think can be sort of a rotating kind of cast of characters depending on the night. Maybe it's Dillingham one night. Maybe it's Minot another night. Maybe it's Shannon or Garza or whoever. So I think that he can use that spot to at least wet the beaks of some of the guys at the end of the bench and give them something so that they're not just buried there. But I don't think it's going to be a major minutes allotment at all, but I do think he's going to try to do it early on in the season.
Will you be surprised if the team wins as many games as it did a year ago?
I will, just because of two things. One is I do think that there's going to be a little bit of acclimation period with Julius Randle especially, and this kind of new look team to kind of figure things out and get its legs underneath itself and really establish a chemistry. So I think that's going to take a little time. I think it's going to take time for Julius to knock off some of the rust from his long layoff and figure things out as well. But then also I just think the West is really, really difficult this year. You have Portland essentially as the only team that is a real pushover, and every other team in the conference has really talented guys that are going to be, most of which are going to be at least going for kind of play-in consideration or playoff consideration. And so I don't think that there are going to be many teams that win. There's not going to be a 65-win team in the conference this season. I think the win totals are going to be depressed a little bit just because there's going to be so much competition and parity. And so I think the over-under for the Wolves right now is like 51.5. I think I'm at 52 right now.
Okay.
But I don't think it's going to be 58 or 59 after 56 wins last year.
I think that's very fair because it does look like, well, you had mentioned you think maybe the Clippers end up taking a bit of a more of a fall than people think, depending on the injury situation, et cetera. So, all right, let's talk. Maybe you can break the tie on what took place last night in Brooklyn, New York. I think Guardsy is, I'm not saying Guardsy, I don't want to misrepresent you, saying officials explain everything about why the Lynx lost that game. But I think he's more on that edge, on that side than I am because of the way the game ended, the free throw disparity. And even, you linked to an athletic colleague had an interesting piece attempting to evaluate officiating in general. And here's the problem I have, not a problem with the piece, but here's the problem that I have with making it then, if there are legitimate officiating issues in the WNBA, and it sounds like there are, I have a problem just zeroing in then on, conveniently, on the one game, the last one, the one moment that seemed to favor the home team, because to me, it's a much more global issue that would suggest that every team at various times has gotten screwed by maybe officiating that's not up to snuff. So where are you on who to blame for what took place last night? Because I'm firmly more on the side that it's more the Lynx' responsibility than the Zebras. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this has been something that I've been thinking a lot about over the last 18 hours or so as I've kind of digested it and looked back on it. And I think I have two sort of beliefs here. One is I think that the Lynx were egregiously wronged at the end of the game. I thought that there were some just terrible calls that went against them. The traveling call that was not called against Stewart is an all-time miss from a gas perspective, and I don't think that Alana Smith really committed much of a foul to put Stewart on the line either. But to allow a player to take 5 steps before she gathers herself and then goes up for a shot was terrible. And I think the Lynx have every right to be incredibly upset at how all of that played out. And I think that there should be reform for officiating, including, as Cheryl Reed said, a third party that is watching from outside of the arena, much like they do in the NBA, to kind of confer on these things.
I concur
on that. And help officials get to the right part. Like, I think all of that needs to happen. And so any bit of criticism that the league gets and the referees get, they deserve it because they were terrible. That said, there were so many opportunities for the Lynx to still win that game. If Courtney Williams plays a C+ game instead of a D- game, they win. I mean, what the Lynx did to the Liberty was really impressive for most of that night. You shut down Sabrina Ionescu, you shut down Brianna Stewart, and they went, 3 for 19 from 3?
Yeah.
The Lynx did. They missed a bunch of layups. They scored 2 points in overtime.
0 for 6 and 5 turnovers as well in OT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrible. Yeah. I mean, they played really poorly. And so I don't think they can say it was all the officials' fault because they had a hand in it. And I don't think it's any secret that officiating is subpar in that league. You have to plan for that and brace for it. It stinks, though, Dan. It still does. Like, it stinks to watch the game go the way that it did down the stretch like that. And it honestly, I was shocked that the WNBA commissioner is wearing what she was wearing and that the league is tweeting what it's tweeting. Like, all of it was terrible optically. I think it was just egregiously bad that way. That said, I cannot say that it was exclusively on the officials. I don't think there was a fix in that way, but man, it looked bad. Yeah, it looked bad in the moment.
And it was bad basketball. It was close basketball.
It was terrible
basketball. It was just a bad game, which we should be able to say, just as we would with NBA games. The problem I always have with reducing it to the last game, as obvious as it is, given it is the last game, is we can start down the road. Like the free throw disparity was great this last game. It was almost as great the game before. I think it was game 4 is 20-9 in favor of the Lynx. And I'm loath to necessarily assume then that means that necessarily the Liberty got screwed. Maybe it was the way the two teams played. I never buy the notion of what should be about the same number of free throws. Well, some of that is dictated by performance. But if you're going to go down the road, I don't think you can leave it out. And that's what people are doing. The aggrieved Lynx people, fans, and quite frankly, the head coach is selective, like any coach, about which moments of inconsistency is she interested in paying attention to. And I that's why I can't play. I just am not as interested in playing the game. I wouldn't have called the foul. I agree on the last play, given the way the game was played. But again, the game before, there were, if we really analyze it, there were some calls I think that the Lynx you could argue got as well, and that's notwithstanding what had even taken place in the game we stole, game one as well. And that's my fear of going too far down the road. That doesn't mean there aren't officiating issues that absolutely need to be explored. I just don't want to play the game if the people I'm arguing with are only interested in remembering the disparities that suit their conspiracy.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think the main takeaway is that it does underscore the need for reform of the officiating process and some steps to be taken to address the complaints that both teams and most people around the league, frankly, it seems to have about the state of officiating in this league. And here is the other part of this, Dan, that I think the WNBA has been slow to understand and slow to realize is there are now exponentially more eyeballs on these games than ever before. That's a very good thing for the league. But a lot of the stuff that was subpar, that was, just not professional enough, the things that they got away with over the years, they're not going to get away with anymore. And so they have to understand they are stepping into a whole new world within a huge audience, and there's going to be attention paid to the officials. There's going to be demands made. There's going to be more gambling on these games. There's going to be all sorts of things that are scrutinized that they have never been used to before. And I think that the league has been caught flat-footed and has been very slow to respond to that. And they better sit down and real quick after the season is over and really take a hard look at everything they're doing, because this is a completely different environment that they're operating in now, and they have to adjust to it.
I'll give you the cliched toss-up question on Vikings-Lions that you could watch almost any day on PTI, one of my favorite shows. In fact, we got a good text coming in on the Lynx discussion they had on the program. Did the Lions win the game, or did the Vikings lose it yesterday afternoon at the People's Stadium?
Oh, I thought the Lions won it, Dan. Certainly the Vikings, with a lot of the penalties, some of the sloppiness that they had, were partially to blame, I think. But Jared Goff was unbelievable. Yeah. Every throw that he needed to make in every big spot, he made it. And you had the kicker make the field goal. They responded when the Vikings had roared all the way back and got back into the game. They responded early after the silly fake punts that they tried didn't work, and they fell behind by 10. I think the Lions are the best team in the NFC, and I think they are one of the very best in the entire NFL. And they looked the part. It was a very good win for them, and they went and took it. And I don't think that the Vikings have a whole lot of things to lament other than just got to play a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair to say. The difficult position for the Vikings going into the game was everybody knew they weren't going to go undefeated, right? You're going to lose. Mm-hmm. You're playing a good team. But the sad part, I think, the frustrating part has to be, man, if you find a way to steal that game or win it as opposed to lose it, you're sitting in such a good position in not just the division, but the whole conference. I think the Vikings would have been 2 games clear of everybody in the conference. Mm-hmm. Now you got a race, right? You got a race in the division. Lions are technically ahead of you with the same record because of the early tiebreaker. Packers found a way to win on a late field goal. What do they have? 2 losses, I think. And the Bears, I don't think are that good, but they also are sitting there because of a bad schedule with only 2 losses. Now it feels very much like the whole thing has been opened up again, and pretty much anybody in the division can say, yeah, we're in this thing.
For sure, yeah. It was certainly an opportunity missed. I mean, when you lead late like the Vikings did at home, you want to be able to close that out. I don't think it's one of those games where you say the sky is falling or right. These guys are frauds because of it, because it was a really good competitive game against a great team, and they came up just a little bit short. If they get the 2-point conversion, maybe they're going to overtime, and maybe it goes the other way. So the Vikings don't have a whole lot to hang their head about, but they can kind of kick themselves and say, yeah, we did miss an opportunity to take a bigger lead, and I wouldn't call it commanding, but certainly a significant lead early on in this thing and really position themselves well. And now they have a fight on their hands. I think what I'm going to be really interested to see, Dan, is how does this defense respond in a short turnaround? Because this is the first time all year where, man, they got run all over the place.
They did.
The Lions ran circles around them. Ben Johnson called a great game. Goff played a great game. And so how does this defense really kind of lick its wounds, maybe feel a little bit humbled and get back at it? Because that was the big thing that stood out to me, is wow, the Lions have an answer for everything the Vikings are doing defensively, and we just have not seen that all year from an opponent.
As we wrap up, let's circle back to get to one other thing related to Game 5. Again, the Lynx numbers were scary, especially in the second half. 28 points scored the last 25 minutes. You mentioned Williams, 2 for 14, pulled several times. And there were times where, she just didn't look like she was ready to play. And Heidemann then, out of desperation, was put in, and then she would make a bad play. And then out of desperation, I think Reeve would, all right, well, let's give Williams, see if she can get, let's see if we can get 2 minutes of magic out of her, right? Because that's what she's done this whole season. There were 0 for 6 in overtime, 5 turnovers. I do believe, though, that it is fair to say that part of why, for both teams, especially in the second half, the quality of play was so putrid was the either unwillingness or inability to call fouls. And people, I mentioned earlier, people love to talk about, let them play. I didn't come to see the referees. Well, I think we saw the limits of that philosophy, because I got to believe if more fouls had been called, maybe you have a better chance to have some kind of offensive flow. And there was literally no second half offensive flow in that game, largely, I think, because the players said, we can just hammer people, because whatever the reason, the decision's been made that, quote unquote, they're going to let us play.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I do think that even in the WNBA or in the NBA and all of the Game 7s that I've watched over the years, you talk to people who play in those games and coach those games, and they will tell you that a lot of times it is a rock fight. It is really ugly because there is so much pressure and so much riding on it. These are human beings that there's desperation there, and definitely they can get swept up in that moment, and it happens regularly. It's very rare that it's a beautifully played closeout game in a Game 7 situation in the NBA, and I think it's similar in Game 5. But yes, when you add to that all of that pressure, then you add the element of you can just get hammered in the lane, going to the basket, or even out on the perimeter, and they're hand checking and doing all those things. It does only make it more difficult to get any kind of feel, rhythm, execution going. And I thought the Lynx in the first half did a pretty darn good job in the face of that.
Yes, they did.
Executing, backdoor cuts, all of that stuff, which makes it, again, even a little more frustrating. Gosh, you're calling it that way the whole time. And then Alana Smith has her hands straight up, and there's really literally no contact at all, or maybe a little bit on Brianna Stewart. And you call that. That was the frustrating thing to me, is because, man, Brianna Stewart was a disaster in the game. Absolutely terrible.
Not for the first time.
So was Ionescu, and just got kind of bailed out that way. So it was unfortunate. But, yes, I think the way that it was called for much of that game only compounded the ugliness. But, Courtney Williams, not just the missed shots, but the decision making was terrible as well. So it was all around.
Some wise guy, I don't remember who it was, said, if you recall, UNESCO hit that big 3 from the logo earlier in the series, and then I think her quote after the game was something like, not bad for second team all in WNBA, and somebody threw out, if they want to update that on the basis of what they saw in the last game, she might not make all WNBA 5th team. So calm down a little bit, because, as you said, the number of shots, what did they go for together? I think they were, was it 5 for 34? Let me see if I can find the number. 5 for 31. 5 for 31, Stewart and UNESCO. So would you, if the Wolves made the finals this year, not WNBA, NBA finals, would you consider wearing Timberwolves Lululemon pants or something that indicated where your allegiances were?
What I would demand of Adam Silver is at least a tie with the spoon and cherry or something.
Yes, something.
Right?
Yes, right.
There's got to be some sort of retribution for what we suffered in watching Kathy Engelbert wear what she wore, and so we got to get it from someone in a position of authority. Because as much as I'd like to say, I can't affect the outcomes of games. I try.
Yeah,
I try to stir the pot.
Right.
I try to clickbait. I try to get people rattled, but it doesn't really work. Adam Silver, get that tie ready, put Prince's face on it or something, because we demand retribution for what we saw last night.
Do Timberwolves Zubas exist? Zubas are from, of course, another lifetime. Can you still get a pair of Timberwolves Zubas?
You can find them somewhere.
Oh, man.
Somewhere. Yeah.
You'd have to go the old, the old blue and green.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
that version.
Yeah.
Oh, it would be classic.
It'd be outstanding.
How could you not love something like that?
I'll wear those.
Also very comfortable to wear in a tight, warm arena. Why
That's
wouldn't
true.
you in June? Yeah. I'd do that.
By the way, you're staying for the Vikings-Rams game Thursday, right? You're in California, Southern and Northern. I assume you're going to go right back to Southern after your Sacramento stop to cover Vikings-Rams.
Well, the problem, Dan, is that the Sacramento game's on Thursday. So
I didn't realize
they're
that.
on the same day.
That's a problem.
And
yeah.
As good as the Vikings have looked, I mean, it's quite possible that the Wolves are the future NBA champions.
Yeah.
So, I gotta hitch my wagon to that train and be there. But we'll certainly have it second screen and be breaking it all down from press row in a beautiful Sacramento Kings arena, which is one of my favorites in the league.
You love that place, don't you? Is that Arco?
Great.
Is
the cowbells.
Is that Arco Arena? Or is that a little?
It used to be.
Yeah.
It used to be. It was
in another lifetime.
We still got the cowbells there. It's
Yeah.
a beautiful spot right downtown, easy to get around. Great fans. So Ant loves playing there. So
Even
should
better.
be a lot of fun.
Ant finished runner-up in the Tim Conley ping pong tournament last night, which, by the way, you didn't show up for. There's a lot of people muttering about your lack of commitment to the bit in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And Ant was beaten by a woman who I don't even know who she was representing, but she was very good. And
wow.
Yeah, she basically lit him up. Yeah. He got to the finals, to his credit. I think, although Conley made it sound like, as Conley played him first round, and somebody said, well, Conley went easy on him because he doesn't want Ant to pout. He wants him to advance. So I don't know if that's convenient logic or that, that maybe actually Ant just beat his ass. I'm not exactly sure, but it was quite the event. I think I won over Conley early.
Yeah, how was the MC?
Well, I'm not great at it. It's really not a strength. I did okay, I thought. Not, I'm not a good one-liner guy in that setting. But I think I did annoy him a little bit because when I introduced him, I said something to the effect of, and here's the individual who I think perhaps more than any other is responsible for the poll ads wanting to sell the Minnesota Twins. And I'm not sure he expected that might be coming. I mean it. I kind of believe it, but I don't know that, he doesn't want to get into the business of stirring up other teams. He is. Everybody, we all get along. We all come from the same amoeba. We're all rooting for one another. I don't need any snarky comments from the host of this thing about, my responsibility because we're trying to win a title and they're not.
Yeah, no, he's very kumbaya. So,
Yes.
I mean, the only thing that I think you could have done that would have rattled him more would be just to say something like, hey, are you setting the bar too high for the other GMs in this town? Like, are they all going to get fired because of you? And like that, that probably would have got him going just a little bit more. But yeah, I was sorry to miss it.
Yeah.
My son turned 12 years old, and this was a big birthday for him after the last year. So I had to sit this one out, but I'll be back next year, and I can't wait for your return trip.
Well, I don't think I'll be invited.
You're like Billy
back.
Crystal now.
Yeah,
Have to be out there
Well,
time and time again.
Here's where I had to be honest with him because he said, "Look, when you get to the finals, and a lot of people are surrounding the one table, maybe do a little play-by-play." I said, "I got to be honest with you, Tim. I'm not a play-by-play. I mean, I was when I was 9. I taped baseball games, but first of all." Ping pong play-by-play, I think, is challenging. And secondly, it's just not a strength of mine, so I ended up not really giving him I think he wanted like some play-by-play to really, sort of spruce up the whole thing and get the excitement going.
You wanted you to be John Barry, the in-arena host.
And probably that's who should have been doing it quite there, because he would have been very good.
Was there a musical number that you did or anything like that to open the show?
No tap dance of any sort. We played it, fairly straight from start to Rudy was there. Your guy Naz Reid was there. Justin Morneau was there. I had a nice conversation with him. You know what's interesting about Morneau? We're running late here, but you know how some players, they get done playing and they maybe it's easy to pick up a few pounds here or look a little bit non-chiseled. Morneau looks great. He looks outstanding. He looks like he could play tomorrow.
He plays hockey with Joe and all those guys, I think, too, right? He's got a rink.
Is that right?
Got his own rink.
Boom, there it is.
Yep, and so he's in shape. You'll like this real quickly. Last year I was at it, and Joe Mauer was there.
Yes,
and he was kind of hanging out. We both got there a little early. He had no one else to hang out with, so it was
you were
me
his
and
guy.
him, just like So we had a great time catching up, and he was just like, "Hey, you want a drink?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, Joe. Let's go have a drink." And he was kind of on an island, so it was the two of us hanging out for a lot of it. It was a good time.
Wait a minute. Joe just drank milk, right? Come on, he didn't have he wasn't boozing it, was he?
It might have been ginger ale.
May have been ginger ale. Yeah. Did you?
He
were
probably
you
drank
honest?
Summit or some Minnesota beer. Yeah, 'cause he's Joe.
Were you honest with him though that you're not really a ball guy?
No, of course not.
Oh.
No, I was just like, I was nothing but flattering him and just making him feel good. He'd been out of the game for a little while, so I wanted to get him back into the public eye and loosen him up a little bit.
That makes sense.
And so, I tried to put him at ease a little bit. Yeah, I didn't say, hey, Joe, to be honest with you, I didn't watch any of your games for the last 4 years of your career. I bailed on that.
Finchie,
I left that for another time.
I had a nice conversation with Finchie. He was very kind, and then I did my best to go to bat for Luka, because Luka is another one of the celebrity ping pong players, and I did everything I could to say, if you don't give this guy 10 minutes a game this year, release him, to trade him, just to give him a chance. It's time it is indeed time. #free Luka.
Let's go. Maybe tomorrow night. Maybe he goes right at Anthony Davis. Just takes it right to him.
Who's to say? You saw it. Joker wanted no part of him the other day.
Wanted nothing to do with it, Dan. Didn't take a shot.
No.
Didn't even take a shot. He was frozen from Luka's greatness.
We'll let you go. Safe travels to California, and we'll be reading and checking in later.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Johnny. That is John Krasinski.
I want to update people. I appreciate Halvey jumping in and putting together a stream online for everybody to watch. And a lot of people have watched. It's kind of crazy.
Oh, that's right. You did. You reminded me of that. You reminded me to make sure I didn't pick my nose, which I don't think I did. I think I have been biting my nails.
Yeah, that's fine. We can handle that. Yeah. But the iHeart issue has been fixed now. So if people want to pick up the last 20 minutes of the show, they can go back to the iHeart app. Everywhere should be good. So we're going to cut the StreamYard out. If you're watching on one of the social media channels, we're going to turn the cammers off. Go back to regularly scheduled programming. But thanks to Halvey for hustling and getting people there.
I do appreciate Halvey's commitment to the bit. Generally, we view ourselves in the afternoon as everybody's gone. Nobody cares. It's that afternoon show. They're on their own.
He hustled at his house.
To his credit, he took care of it. So, all the best to our guy, Halvey. Behind schedule, we'll pause, come back, and get to a couple of very good texts that have come in. Don't go away.
From the gas pumps in Granite Falls to the ice chest in Isanti, the Minnesota Lottery's Vikings scratch game is here. These are the concrete coliseums where we challenge chance and chase glory, where we pursue our passion and dare to dream. These are the stadiums where we come to play. Get in the game.